MPT is the multiplayer mod closest to vanilla Civ 3 Conquest, but there's a reason we mod the game, and that's because without these changes, the game is as unbalanced as Hulk Hogan on a teeter-totter. A lot of the things you can build are just terrible, doubly so in the early phases of the game. So this will be a list of the things that you should avoid building in MPT at least till you have a given number of cities. Number 7 is temples or libraries. Playing for score is important, but you need to get your food and shields online first. And generally, any tile you gain from an early temple could be just as easily gained by planting a city there instead. I would wait until you have 5 cities or more before going for a border expand, unless you are somehow both completely boxed in, but also very safe. Number 6 is wonders. Wonders are extremely expensive and pay off over the course of hundreds of turns. Yes, that includes the statue of Zeus, and the turn limit in MPT is 90 turns, so this stuff just doesn't pay off. If you build it, you'll get like 4 ancient calves by the end of the game, unless you build it so early that you completely tanked your expansion phase, in which case, good luck having your team 3v4 without you. If you're in that safe of a position that you could build a wonder, it's better just to build settlers and units to expand safely. That way, you'll at least be producing score for your team, which, as a reminder, is the ultimate victory condition in MPT. For number 5, let's switch over to some spicier picks. Next one is the Spearmen. The Spearmen is bad, at least in terms of the first 30 turns of the game, before unit costs become an issue. Having 2 warriors is just better in terms of combat power. To start, 2 warriors are twice as powerful as a Spearman on offense. They can be upgraded. They provide twice as much military police. Then they're generally better on defense too, because it takes 2 attacks to get through them. They're also divisible. If you build 2 warriors, but you only need 1 to defend a tile, you can split them up, move them around, and allocate them into places where you need them in a way that's very lean. This is especially important when it comes to getting vision. Most of being good at MPT comes down to either unit control or being able to play as greedily as possible without it being risky. Relying on warriors for defense instead of spearmen allows me to play very greedily, like I'm doing here, while controlling, protecting, and projecting more power. Number 4 on our list is the early Barracks. Now this one will ruffle some feathers. The Barracks is interesting because it's at the same time a very strong building, while also being completely terrible. It's expensive, costing the same as 4 warriors, and does nothing upon construction except suck money out of your treasury. At the same time, though, being veteran is a 33% combat boost to attack and defense, which is actually insane. But as we discussed in the early game, quantity is more important than quality when it comes to units. Consider the possibilities. If you're in a risky position, you just want warriors to defend and get out your cities as safely as possible. In some cases, you might want archers for defensive bombard if the enemy has kill threat. While if you're in a safe position, there's no need for a barracks at all. You're better off just going for multiple granaries or regular units to get vision, deal with barbs, and provide military police. All of this applies to chopping barracks too. If you do that, you're wasting worker moves, so you're lowering your production and ability to expand long term. I would recommend not building a barracks until you have at least 3 cities. A good option for growing big while giving yourself some wiggle room in terms of safety might be to wait until your 3rd city hits size 2, then slave a barracks there. I might make an exception for militaristic civs if you want to play aggressively, especially ones with unique units that you can access early. Although even with the Aztecs and Zulu, it's more valuable to get map information in early pressure. As Aztecs, I open Jag Settler, or Jag Warrior Settler for that reason, and as Zulu, I usually build the extra scout. I don't do barracks until I'm on 2 cities, or maybe even 3. Okay, number 3 is slaving Granary on 1 city. You might notice at this point that I like granaries quite a bit. They help you grow big and quickly, and also help you get to high population sizes in the mid-game so that your core cities can 1 per turn expensive units. For this reason, it may surprise you that I think slaving Granary on 1 city is shit. You're better off just building 3 warriors and then a settler when you hit size 3. Let's break down the yields of what these 2 options give. We'll assume that you're not agricultural. Granaries are a little bit better if you are agricultural, so keep that in mind, but we'll start with the inferior case. A settler costs 15 shields and 2 citizens. 2 citizens are worth 20 food. After a 1-turn delay, the settler gives 2 to 3 shields per turn and at least 1 gold per turn, 2 food per turn, and 4 units support per turn. It also gives vision and extra tile mobility because the city center counts as a road. Slaving Granary, on the other hand, costs about 13 shields when you count the shields that you automatically waste after slaving. It costs 1 citizen, so 10 food. It costs 1 gold per turn, and the unhappiness from slaving costs another gold per turn, although military police can mitigate that. It gives 5 food every 3 turns as the benefit, so about 1.66 food per turn. So basically, a settler is way better in terms of shields and commerce. It is also better in terms of food, in theory, eventually, Although the idea with slaving ground is that you leverage the immediate 10 food that you save, and then you use that to get your settlers out very quickly. Now, if you don't do that, it's just strictly inferior in terms of all three yields, but even if you do it that way, this leaves a massive hole in the early game where you don't have units and the enemy can effectively shut you down with just a random passing unit like a conscript warrior even. If that delays your second or sometimes even your third city, then you can just get completely screwed. The enemy has more cities, and so they're outproducing you, and the Granary doesn't really help your capital much because you don't have enough worked tiles to get it to 10 shields per turn, where you'd get 1 archer per turn or 1 spear per turn or whatever you wanted. There are much better alternatives. So the first one would be if you are mostly safe, it's better to go for an early city and then slave 2 granaries immediately after. So in this case, I popped, but this is the build I went for here. You're going to see me slave 2 granaries in this game. Again, pretty safe build. I'm doing it against the Aztecs. No problem. Don't have to mess myself up. If instead you are 100% sure you're completely safe, i.e. not playing against the Aztecs, what you can do is you can just do your granary immediately. No slaving, you can chop it if you want. Slaving granary on one city is never better than the superior of the two options that I just listed. Okay, number 2, let's talk about workers. Going for worker on 1 or 2 cities is terrible. Workers are bad in MPT for a lot of different reasons. They decrease your population and delay your city plants. They take a while before they yield any material benefit, and they're a huge liability. You have to protect both the worker itself and protect the worked tiles. It gets sillier when you break it down. Let's say early on, you go for a worker in one city, and then you do your settler. If instead you just flipped the order there, if you'd done the settler before the worker, you'd have planted your new city 5 turns sooner. Okay, in 5 turns, that new city could have just built its own worker. So just delaying the worker out of your cap gives you a second free worker. You are effectively trading 5 workers for an entire worker if you do a worker on 1 city. And to clarify, while it's better, I don't think that building 2 workers on 2 cities is good. In fact, it's actually terrible. Go as long as you can without building a second worker. I'd say ideally wait until you're on 4 cities, maybe 3 if you had your granary, if you have a granary or 2 by that point in the game. But the highest priority in terms of scaling is always getting a food lead. If you fall behind on worker moves, you can use that food lead to build workers and catch up. If you fall behind on food, workers will not help with that because of the despotism penalty. So I should end this section with a note. Do not plant your cities. Do not plant cities that you have not roaded yet. But the way that you do that isn't by building extra workers. It's by being careful in consideration of your worker moves. So think about where you want your cities to go when you assign your worker moves, and think about where you want your worker moves to go when you choose where to plant your cities. If you're good, you can harmonize these two choices such that you always you always have a road leading to your next city plant, and you can delay getting workers out as long as possible. Now, later in the game, you're going to want a lot of workers so you can road towards the enemy, and once you start growing your cities to very high population, then having work tiles is very good. But earlier in the game, you want your cities at a very low population because they're trying to get settlers out as soon as possible. So workers are a bad thing to build. Okay, the last item I wanted to talk to you guys about is veteran archers. Okay, so we know from before that you should likely delay your barracks until you have 3 to 5 cities. But once you build it, the barracks city should be building warriors. If you need archers, build them in a city that doesn't have a barracks. There's a few reasons for this. The main selling point of an archer is defensive bombard, which, if you don't know, is insanely strong in multiplayer due to a bug. So not only is that extra HP on 2 warriors better than 1 extra HP on 1 archer, but if you build veteran archers, you run into this awkward problem. See, the bombard only triggers if the archer is underneath the attacked unit, and if your archers have extra HP and your warriors don't, the archer will be on top and the bombard won't trigger. Now, if you specifically know that you'll need veteran archers, that's okay. Like if you're setting up a kill or if there's like a pesky warrior on a mountain, in that case, veteran archers are good. They're the better thing to have. But in these situations, you'll know that you'll need them in advance. If you do not know what you need in that moment, you want to go for veteran warriors. At least until you have 10 shields per turn, when you can 1 per turn archers, or until you hook iron and you don't even have the option of building warriors anymore. Okay, that's it for today. Song of Conquest's early access came out today, and I got a review key, so I'll be doing some videos on that. Comment below if you're interested in that game, or if you want any more MPT hop takes from me. Cheers, guys.